Dagon sa Huyuhoy is what made the longest revolt in the Philippines take place in Bohol, outliving the real-life hero of the Boholano named Dagohoy. This is what inspires the Boholanos to carry the symbol of coming together, working together, supporting each other, loving one another, and making a safer Bohol possible. An island province ready for development and uplift the lives of its people. This is the basic framework upon which the structure of the Joint Task Force Dagohoy is founded.
Provincial Joint Task Force Dagohoy is a combination of the pre-existing whole-of-nation approach type of law enforcement in Bohol, dubbed as the Joint Task Force Dagon, with the National Task Force to end local communism having the same goals. This is to harmonize programs pertaining to peace and development of both special bodies. Joint Task Force Dagohoy shall be chaired by Governor Art Kua Yap, an advisory group composed of Sangguniang Panlalawigan and the two dioceses of Tagbilaran and Talibon. The Provincial Joint Task Force Dagohoy chairman shall be supported by support teams to effectively carry out its duties, functions, and responsibilities. The intelligence support team shall assist the chairman by intelligence or information gathering province-wide in support of the overall mission of Joint Task Force Dagohoy, as well as disseminate information for the consumption of concerned partner units or agencies. The Public Information Office shall be the communications arm of the PGTF Dagohoy, linking it with info sources to gather data or info and disseminate information to appropriate agencies. The Legal Council shall assist the Joint Task Force regarding all legal matters affecting its overall conduct of programs, projects, and activities. The Finance or Logistics team shall be responsible for all aspects of finance management in the Joint Task Force. The Provincial Joint Task Force Dagohoy shall have an Executive Director. The Executive Director will be assisted by an overall Secretariat to provide administrative and logistics support to the Provincial Joint Task Force. A Central Command Center for the Joint Task Force Dagohoy shall be created. One of the clusters in the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict, which is the Law Enforcement Cluster, was already embedded in the mandates of Task Force Dagon by virtue of Executive Order No. 1, Series of 2016. It is tasked to enforce the different laws concerning peace, order, and security of the community using the whole-of-nation approach, considering all its sub-task groups are composed of different agencies and partner stakeholders. The Department of the Interior and Local Government of Bohol shall serve as the Secretariat to the Provincial Task Force Dagon to provide administrative and logistics support to the Provincial Task Force Dagon. Task Force Dagon is composed of 9 sub-task groups, starting with Task Group Disaster Response or TG Luwas Kinabuhi, which responds and plans for disaster response along with the necessary preparations to mitigate its effects. Anti-illegal drugs or Task Group Banat, tasked to enforce laws on anti-illegal drugs. Traffic or Task Group Kadalanan, tasked to enforce laws on traffic and transportation. Task Group Anti-Criminality or TG Contra Krimen is tasked to respond and prevent all forms of criminality and maintain peace and order, led by the Bohol Police Provincial Office. Task Group Maritime Security or TG Kadagatan is responsible for the implementation and enforcement of maritime laws, led by the Philippine Coast Guard. Anti-Smuggling or Task Group Contra Palusot is responsible for enforcement of anti-smuggling laws, led by the National Bureau of Investigation. Internal Security or Task Group Kalinaw is responsible for ensuring internal peace and security all throughout the province, led by the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Environmental Protection or Task Group Kinaiyahan is responsible for the enforcement of environmental laws of the country, led by the Bohol Environment Management Office. Lastly, Tourism Security or Task Group Turista, led by the Bohol Tourism Police. Pursuant to Executive Order 70, Series of 2018, institutionalizing the whole-of-nation approach to end local communist armed conflict, Task Force Huyuhoy was created under the Provincial Joint Task Force Dagohoy to take charge in the implementation of programs mandated by EO No. 70. The Provincial Planning and Development Office shall serve as the Secretariat to the Task Force Huyuhoy. Task Force Huyuhoy shall be composed of different clusters starting off with the Situational Awareness and Knowledge Management Cluster led by the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency. The Local Government Empowerment Cluster shall be led by the Department of the Interior and Local Government. The Legal Cooperation Cluster led by the Provincial Legal Office. The Strategic Communication Cluster. The Sectoral Unification, Capacity Building and Empowerment Cluster led by the Office of the Provincial Agriculturist. The Basic Services Cluster led by the Department of Social Welfare and Development shall provide responsive delivery of basic services. The Poverty Reduction, Livelihood and Employment Cluster led by the Technical Education Skills Development Authority. The Infrastructure Resource Management Cluster led by the Provincial Engineer's Office. The Localized Peace Engagement Cluster led by the Governor's Office. The ECLIP and Amnesty Program Cluster led by the Provincial Social Welfare and Development Office. The International Engagement Cluster shall be led by the Center for Culture and Arts and Development. The Rural Development Program, Purok Power Movement or RDP-PPM shall become the vehicle for cascading all component programs, projects and activities of the Joint Task Force DAGOHOY to the rural communities or the Puroks through its community mobilization mechanism. The Provincial Joint Task Force DAGOHOY, a peace and development effort of the provincial government of Bohol using the whole-of-nation approach to end local communist armed conflict.